So Bitcoin's kind of in that camp where in order to ban Bitcoin, you have to ban someone's ability to memorize 12 words, or to use open source software. And so the United States has the most kind of economic capacity to go after Bitcoin, but they also have the most checks and balances that can prevent them from doing that. I mean, until recently, during this whole multi-week period where there was no Speaker of the House, the acting Speaker of the House, he actually runs the Bitcoin white paper on Congress's website. He likes Bitcoin. And so for the multi-week period, the acting Speaker of the House, and it's still there, even though he's not the acting Speaker anymore, but literally Congress is hosting the Bitcoin white paper.
Renowned macro analyst and investment strategist, Lyn Alden, has expressed an even stronger bullish sentiment towards Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency by market cap. Alden has been a prominent figure in the Bitcoin community for the past 3 years, consistently advocating for the cryptocurrency since 2020. However, she now reveals that her confidence in Bitcoin has deepened, an unexpected development for someone deeply entrenched in the world of cryptocurrency. This renewed optimism stems from Alden's recent publication of her first book, Broken Money. The book provides a thought-provoking exploration of the history of money, seen through the lens of technology. In Broken Money, Alden scrutinizes the flaws in the existing fiat-based global financial system, emphasizing how it continues to impoverish billions while disproportionately enriching the top 1%. Alden also highlights how advancements in technology and energy abundance have improved various aspects of modern life but have left the outdated monetary system untouched. According to Lyn Alden, the time has come for a fundamental shift from the current debt-based, inflation-prone monetary system to one that supports scarcity, decentralization, and seamless digital transactions. Bitcoin aligns with all these criteria and more. With Bitcoin's growing popularity and the grim macroeconomic backdrop, Alden envisions the world, including the United States, moving closer to an era of Bitcoin standard. This era would witness a surge in global Bitcoin adoption and a corresponding exponential increase in its value. Clips from Alden's recent interview with Julia L.A. provide further insights.
So as mentioned before, Bitcoin challenges the existing structure because Bitcoin and then to some extent stablecoins, they just go around financial borders in a way that prior monies don't. And that is both an opportunity and a kind of a risk from these different countries' perspective. And so basically what we're seeing in the past almost 15 years is just greater and greater monetization. I'm not aware of any other asset that has fallen 75 or 80% in price or more as many times as Bitcoin did and bounced back to new highs and just kind of kept going from there. You've had this kind of big long-term period of just more and more people understanding Bitcoin, wanting to hold some of their assets in Bitcoin, wanting to build companies on top of Bitcoin that make it easier to use. And so we're basically seeing the bootstrapping of an asset, of a new money, in a way that's pretty unusual. It's kind of like watching the internet build out, except you can also just directly buy a share of the internet. And that's kind of what we're seeing in this form. And so my long-term projection is, basically expecting to see greater and greater liquidity, greater and greater market cap in a volatile way. The bigger and more liquid the network gets, it should decrease its volatility over time, because a lot of the volatility we see is based on, one actor, one little offshore casino, for example, can leverage it up and then blow up, and that can cause volatility. And also, when you're in an early stage, any sort of startup company, for example, is basically an option on whether or not that company is going to succeed. It either goes up 10x, 100x, or it fails, right? And so any small shift that affects the perception or the probability that it's going to succeed or fail can dramatically change the price. Whereas, say once Bitcoin's been around for 30 years or 40 years and has reached, closer to its target addressable market, that, just kind of more stabilizes, I think. So I think what we're seeing is the ongoing bootstrapping of a new money. It's being tested for various weaknesses or risks along the way. So far, it's succeeding them. It's proven to be anti-fragile. So it survived the Mt. Gox hack. It survived the China ban on miners. It survived attempts by its own industry to centralize it with a block size increase. It's gone through these various challenges, and it's kind of remained its core functionality in place. And I think that some of the biggest risks going forward is that when the U.S. government increasingly tries to go after self-custody and privacy, I don't think they really mind people holding Bitcoin in like a regulated silo, like an ETF, for example. But they don't particularly like people self-custodying their own Bitcoin, and they really don't like people making that Bitcoin private. And so I think that's the ongoing challenge. That's the kind of the next phase of test that I think Bitcoin has to go through. But that as long as no one can break it or centralize it, I think it's likely to continue taking market share from other assets over a multi-year period going into the 2030s.
Lyn Alden's long-term outlook for Bitcoin is notably optimistic. The esteemed macro analyst foresees a future with enhanced liquidity, rapidly expanding market capitalization, and most significantly, widespread acceptance and adoption by investors from all walks of life. While she acknowledges that there are no absolute guarantees in the world of finance, Alden emphasizes the high likelihood of a new era in finance taking shape. This digital monetary era is being constructed on the sturdy foundation of Bitcoin and its underlying network. During the interview, Alden also delves into potential risks that could impede or alter the course of Bitcoin adoption, particularly in the United States. She contends that the likelihood of such hindrances is relatively low. Bitcoin is not only gaining traction among U.S. lawmakers but also derives substantial strength and legitimacy from the Internet. As long as the Internet remains unchanged, Alden believes that Bitcoin's momentum will continue to surge. The interview provides additional insights into her perspective.
The bubbles that exist now are because they're constrained by either bank transfers or ports of entry, which are both very tightly controlled by their authorities. And so to the extent that the internet exists, it's very hard for government authorities to control the flow of information around it. And there's always a bit of a cat and mouse game. The network's always hardening to make its data harder to track. Basically different ways of bringing money around the world or transferring money around the world. But basically, as long as, kind of the world doesn't itself get severed into two internets or something, which is possible. But basically now there's not just wires, but there's satellite internet. So to the extent that the internet remains not in a bubble, I think Bitcoin is likely to spread through all parts of that network. And that's just something that's very challenging for authorities to do much about. And the ones that really could go after it, like the United States, are bound by the fact that we have some degree of rule of law. For example, in the 1990s, Phil Zimmermann invented PGP, pretty good privacy, basically open source encryption. And the government didn't like that. They went after him with criminal lawsuits for exporting arms. That's how they went after him. And he said, okay, so then he just wrote it. He wrote the code in a book. He published a book that was the source code and said, well, now it's protected by the First Amendment. It's words and numbers. And the United States actually backed down. And they had to change their laws around exporting, things like encryption. And there's also a case where people would put code, like encryption-based code, on a T-shirt, and the T-shirt would say, "This T-shirt cannot be exported. It's dangerous munitions." It's like a joke to point out how just certain laws just don't make sense in a certain world. You're now trying to restrict literally just someone's information, something that they came up with and can share freely. And so Bitcoin's kind of in that camp where, in order to ban Bitcoin, you have to ban someone's ability to memorize 12 words, or to use open source software. And so the United States has the most kind of economic capacity to go after Bitcoin, but they also have the most checks and balances that can prevent them from doing that. I mean, until recently, during this whole multi-week period where there was no Speaker of the House, the acting Speaker of the House, he actually runs the Bitcoin white paper on Congress's website. He likes Bitcoin. And so for the multi-week period, the acting Speaker of the House, and it's still there, even though he's not the acting Speaker anymore, but literally Congress is hosting the Bitcoin white paper. And there's multiple pro-Bitcoin senators and congressmen and presidential candidates. And so it's just kind of a hard thing to stop unless someone can find a way to just critically impair it or centralize it. It's just kind of growing. And I think it's hard to get into a bubble unless you can make the internet itself a bubble.
According to Alden, We have reached a pivotal moment where the shift towards a robust monetary system is inevitable. While this may not be readily apparent to everyone, particularly in emerging countries where weaker currencies can temporarily rely on stronger ones like the US dollar, these so-called robust currencies are not immune to problems of their own. They, too, face the threat of inflation, although not at the same accelerated rate as other currencies. Alden believes that a day will come when the need for printing even more currency to meet massive debt obligations will hasten inflation, rendering the world unable to depend on the dollar or other strong currencies to preserve wealth. According to Alden, this day is approaching much sooner than most anticipate, and the global consensus will ultimately shift toward Bitcoin as a means to safeguard and grow wealth. Share your thoughts on Alden's insights in the comments section below. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.